CJNU 93.7 FM Nostalgia Radio in Winnipeg is the proud broadcast partner of the Health Sciences Centre Foundation Bannatyne Legacy Circle Celebration. Presented by Johnston Group in partnership with Canad Inns, with additional support from Belfosh Signs and outstanding branding. I'm Adam Glynn, and I had the pleasure of putting together this very special broadcast during a very unusual year. If you missed any of the programme, you can listen back to it in full on the Health Sciences Centre Foundation website and at cjnu.ca. Of course, in putting together a 2-hour radio programme, not all of the material that we recorded makes it to the final broadcast. But, exclusively for you, we have access to all of the bits that were left on the cutting room floor. And so I'm delighted to introduce the full conversation I recorded with Katherine Klassen in late 2020. In the virtual studio today, from her home, we have Katherine Klassen. Kathy, thank you so much for sparing some time.
You're so welcome.
So, for the benefit of those who have never met you before, whether in person or virtually, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Wow, I don't know where should I start?
That's a good. Well, dare I say the beginning? So you were born in Ukraine.
In the Ukraine, yeah.
And it was not exactly a peaceful place at the time you were born.
No, it was. I was a child. I didn't understand it all. I just followed what was put in my road.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Felt protected as much as my parents could do that.
Tell me about your parents.
Well, they were Mennonite background, and Mennonites were in the Ukraine for hundreds of years. And then when they went through all kinds of other things before the war, or even before First World War, like they were constantly under pressure to not practice their religion and their. So things weren't good from the time that my mother was even born, and she was born in 1915. So things were rough.
The Mennonite community have been through so much, and yet somehow are able to overcome it all.
Well, that's human spirit when you have faith, right?
Very true. Very true. I have to ask you, Kathy, what was it like for you as a young woman arriving in Winnipeg? You know, English was not your first language, and it was... I can't... Try and paint a picture for me, because I can't imagine what it must have been like.
You know, yes, it was scary, and it was strange, and it was like... you don't know if you're acting right or how to do things. But at the same time, when this happens, when you are not alone, when you are in a community that is going through the same things, and you learn from each other's experience, so you just accept things and work out the way best you can to get to where you want to get going.
You know, there are strange parallels with some of what is happening in the world today as we all live with the realities of a truly global pandemic.
Yeah.
I guess we are truly all in this together, and we are sharing certain experiences, and, you know, we are together but apart. And it's that kind of resilience that helps people get through these challenging times.
Exactly. You need support. Like somebody said to me once, how did your mother, with 4 little children, and my youngest brother was a baby, a newborn, and my father was already taken by the Germans at the time, how did she get through bombed out Germany to get to where she wanted to go? And I says, I don't know. But she was running with her children, of course, to protect them, like mothers do. But at the same time, there was that drive to something she knew, and she was running from the Russians. She didn't want to be confiscated by them because she was fluent in Russian, and so our clothes already looked Russian, so you could easily be detected and said. And when the Russians wanted to have their people back, she, that fear of going back there and facing that persecution, it made a drive in her, and she always said, "I want to get to the English zone." And I often said to my mother, "How did you come to say, I want to get to the English zone?" Germany was divided into three parts: the Russian, the American, and the English. Why did you keep on saying, when the trains weren't going where you wanted to go, she would get off the train and say, "I want to get into the English zone. I want to find a train who goes to the English zone." And I often said to her, like, "How did you know that?" And she says, "I didn't. I just wanted to get into the English zone."
Wow.
And the funny thing was, which happened to my grandmother, that she got caught by the Russians because they didn't say that. They didn't fight to get into the English zone. But even the American zone was the same thing. If you were there, the Americans just said, to the Russians, "You want your people? Here's the Ukrainian-born people. You can have them." And that's how they were transported back by with animal carts and so on into the high northern Siberia, where they lived for many years. My grandmother was in jail, and what she told me later, when things got better and she got to Germany, she said that for 12 years, she would only go to the bathroom with a guard beside her, how hard that had been. And she'd only get one little crust of bread a day, a crust of bread a day, and a bit of water. And that's what they had to live on. And she got through all of that, and she still turned 98 years old.
It's staggering to think about this now.
Yes, I know. Like, when I think about it myself, like, I haven't gone through that, but and she didn't want to talk about the hard times. But for some reason, I once asked her about, like, how was it, because bathroom privileges are important, and she says, "You just have to, like, every time you had a guard beside you to go to the bathroom." And I cannot fathom that. I cannot.
No kidding. No kidding. I mean,
so I don't think you want to tell that the rest of the world, but
no, but still, like, it gives context to everything. And, when people think about the problems we face in the world today, sometimes you need that little bit of perspective to say, okay, do you know what? I can probably survive whatever tomorrow throws at me.
Yeah.
Considering our forefathers and foremothers were able to do this.
Exactly. Yes. And still live pretty healthy. Like, even when she came out of there, I consider her quite healthy. Like, she lived for some time, but she was very, very grateful. She couldn't believe the fortune to be able to get out of there and see what the Western world had to offer.
It's incredible. It really is incredible. So I'm thinking of you once again. You've arrived in Winnipeg, of all places, and you're,
I know, I
you're
had
starting...
no control over that.
Well, no, and it's an amazing city, and I love this place, and I'm so happy to be able to call this place home. But back then you arrive. Bet you couldn't have pinpointed it on a map if you'd been asked. But there you were, and you started making choices for yourself. And you immediately started, you threw yourself into education and making sure you were learning the world around you.
Yeah. But when I think back, there was no other other thing to think about. Like, that's what you had to do. You had to get an education while it was there.
Yeah.
And it meant still working and getting that education because I was of age, right?
Yeah. And you ended up pursuing, of all of the careers you could have chosen, nursing. What was it that drew you towards that?
But you know what? As somebody, and this was a Canadian-born Canadian, said, at that time, there was three opportunities: secretary, teacher, or nursing. So you not a big choice.
Which, do you know, again, it's perspective, right? It is perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about the choices that women were making in the 60s and even in the 70s about what they wanted to do with their careers. It's kind of crazy when you look at how far we've come in some areas, and then I guess depressingly how far we have not come in others. But still, it's interesting to remember that things were so similar and yet so different not that long ago.
Okay. Yeah. Or you got married and had children. That was it. And you expected your husband to provide. I don't know. Like, that was not the option.
No, you threw yourself into it heart and soul, though, and you tried a few different things. You ended up taking a position at the Health Sciences Centre. What was it like?
Oh, it was like, I mean, I had my training from St. Boniface, so it was great because the teaching opportunities were wonderful, and so I was. I mean, I could have stayed at St. Boniface too, but I'm not quite sure why I didn't. I just know that I did apply a few other places, and they hired me at Health Science Center, and I was, because without experience. To just say you want to go to the operating room, it's not that easy today. Even later on, when I applied to positions, and it was always the big question: do you have experience? So to start there without experience was a great privilege.
Yeah, and that's an interesting commentary on the way that the world of work has changed, in that there were arguably greater opportunities back then to truly try something and be given a chance to do something. And a lot of people were able to find their vocation that way.
Yeah.
So you worked in nursing pretty much your whole career, but you decided quite early on that you wanted to, I don't know, did you have that kind of spirit of wanderlust where you wanted to go and see the rest of the world?
Yes, and that's also a time element, because as I said in my write-up, that like kids graduating from high school, they were given by their parents a graduation gift of going to Europe for $1 a day. That was the thing to do, and traveling by, I don't know, by plane was. I guess it was not. I consider it cheap at that time, because I mean, we didn't have money anyway. But still, it was possible to fly to Europe and go by train and buy a train pass and go from one place to the next. And and somebody often said, like, you when you had that train pass, you used it for whatever length you bought it for. And you'd be sitting on the train, and the Europeans, they laughed at us and said, "So you saw Europe through the train." But no, we stopped at quite a few places. But once you started that train pass, your time expired too. So if you stayed anywhere too long, you already misused the money you paid for that train pass, kind of thing.
You made your investment in it, and you wanted to make sure you got your money's worth.
You got from place to place.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's, it's funny, that's something people forget. If you look at geography, the scale of Europe compared to the scale of North America, you can get on a train and travel from one side of Europe to the other and see, several countries and a huge diversity of people and culture. Whereas here in North America, you could get on a train in Toronto and ride it to Vancouver, and you've stayed in Canada the whole way, and you've probably travelled further.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's lots of opportunities. And I mean, right now it's, I think, I guess I will never travel again. I talked to one of my girlfriends in Switzerland, and I says, I don't know if we'll ever see again. She says, well, I don't plan on coming.
Well, I guess we're lucky that through technology we can be closer together even when we are further apart. That is a good thing. But,
Yeah.
1970s, a long distance phone call was an expensive proposition, and
Oh,
you
yes,
found
you're
yourself.
absolutely right.
You
I
found
know I remember one phone call that I had to pay for. It was 3 minutes. I barely could say what I had to say, and it was $17.
Good God,
Yes.
that's
But I only said what I needed to say, and that was it.
that's daylight robbery right there. That's awful.
And that was $17. I'll never forget it. And I think hourly wage was probably 5 or something.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that during these tumultuous times in the 70s, you found yourself going to Russia of all places.
Yeah. It was, I was actually very scared about that because in my passport, it says born in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
But and nobody on like, and I'm thinking now like border guards and so on would actually click into this, that the Ukraine was Russia.
Yeah.
Or like they didn't, at that time, nobody talked about the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of Russia, and that was it. The USSR.
Indeed.
And so I often think about that, like, and going there, I was afraid because that's what it says in my passport. And I went through the Bern consulate, the Canadian consulate in Bern at the time, and I said, like, what if something happens to me? Where's my recourse? And they said, you're on your own.
Blimey. That's serious stuff.
Yeah, you're on your own. And the only thing is you have to contact us, and we will definitely do what we can, but you are on your own.
My God. I have so much respect for you for doing it, because I would have been terrified too.
Yeah. I think my mother was more terrified for me than I was myself. Probably I was a little bit ignorant about it all. And basically, we had no problems. Like my girlfriend was Swiss, so she had, their passport is very red.
Mm.
And so whenever she flung out her passport and I flung out my passport, it was like the two of you are together. and we said, yeah. But on the way back already, there was one scary point, and we were on a train going to actually Poland, but East Germany too. And these two border guards come in, like great, tall, well-dressed men with all the decorations on them, and very stern, and wanted to see all our stuff. So we had to open our backpacks, and here they are. So my girlfriend had all her negatives, and we cameras all had negatives at that time, in a black paper bag. And they got extremely authoritative about it, like, what's in there? And we have to take this. And she was very artistic, and she wanted all these pictures like that. That was the reason going and taking all these pictures. So she was very concerned that she would lose these negatives. And they said they would have to take them. They had already had them in their hand, and she kept on talking. And I only know English and German, and she knew a bit of French. And so then they said they understood some French. One of them said that he understood French. And so she used all the words I think she could to persuade them that she had not taken any pictures that she was not allowed to take.
Mm-hmm.
But we had. We had taken pictures of the countryside, which we were not allowed to do. And some of the border crossings, we had taken pictures too. And so then I started to shake. I thought, okay, they're going to do something. They're going to drag us off the train, and they're going to drag us into some station somewhere.
Yeah.
But for some reason, she was talking so much, like they didn't want me to talk English at all and no German. So I couldn't say anything. But eventually, after about 45 minutes or so, they said that, oh, let it be.
Wow.
That was my scary point of the whole trip. Yeah.
God. It's incredible looking back at times like that. I love the chutzpah that your friend showed by saying, nah, it's fine. Don't worry. We just took photos where we were supposed to, hoping that they wouldn't look too closely at the negatives.
Well, that's the idea. They wanted to take the negatives all apart, and then if you can't develop them anymore after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God. And so you had this opportunity and you took it and you seized it with both hands and you traveled and you saw as much of the world as you could. And it was a scary experience at various points. Did you feel like it was a real sort of family thing? You wanted to sort of trace the footsteps of your ancestors?
No, I knew from the start I wouldn't be able to. Not at that time. I did it in 2007, but at that time, no, you did not step out of line. When they told you go and see that church, and not even church. It was a museum. There were no churches in 1974. They were all closed and they were made museums out of them. So when they told you to go and see that at 9:00, you did it. You didn't ask questions as to if you wanted to go somewhere else. They gave you some time in the afternoon, you could go somewhere else. So that was kind of like freedom. And most of the time we would try to find some other tourist. And I know at one point we were having breakfast, excuse me, and there was a bunch of, they looked like businessmen from Poland, and they noticed us and that we didn't belong in that country. So they approached us and they spoke German, so that was good. Then they said, have you seen anything like, this was Tashkent, and have you really seen the way people live? And we said, no, we can't go there. And they said, we'll take you. And so they took us, and you saw like the raw sewer running out of their little houses, the way kids played on the street in the mud. And we're talking November by then. Yeah. So it was cold. And because of them, that's why we had so many pictures that we were not allowed to take. But that's part of, that was eye-openers, but I knew that I could not trace anywhere where my family, because you were only allowed Siberia of that part, and then we had to go to Moscow, and we could only fly at night. It was flights, no train, except from Moscow to Poland, we took the train. But other than that, from Tashkent to Almaty, it was always nighttime flights. And the planes were always full. but the service was like, if you had your eyes closed, you didn't get anything. If you had your eyes open, they threw a candy at you. And that was the service
I feel like I should make a joke about the fact that I guess that plane travel hasn't changed that much.
No,
that would be unfair though.
But at that time, our plane service was very good, so it was like, ooh. And now we are going that way direction too. Yes.
Oh, that is too funny.
But so everything was at night, so we didn't see the countryside except for those times that somebody took us, and it was unusual. So that's for that reason I did not trace my ancestors, because they came around Kiev. That's where they all were. And I did see that area in 2007 with a tour group.
That's quite incredible. So you had this incredible opportunity as a young woman to go and see part of the world that perhaps many others didn't have a chance to see firsthand. You sort of peered beneath the Iron Curtain, and then you came back to Winnipeg and came home and threw yourself back into work and life again.
And appreciate it, because that I didn't have to live with that kind of pressure on me to live.
You ended up, so having worked at HSC, trained at St. B, you then worked at Deer Lodge for a time, and then at the Misericordia. So you really did have a lot of frontline experience in different healthcare locations around Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Why,
it was.
Why is it?
I can say I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. What is it about working with people in that kind of environment that you find or you found most enjoyable? When you're with the doctor and he's the king, of course, and you try to coordinate things together with your own kind. I can't say much about, like, it was always like when you really worked with each other and knew who need to do that and who need to do that and be in your position and do the work. That was the best times. Like, building that kind of rapport with people on a team is not an easy thing for everyone. So it must have been pretty fantastic.
There were tense situations. I'm sure it's not. There was very good situations where we just coordinate very well, and then there were very tense situations too, and they were there.
Of course. Well, I'm glad, because it sounds like you've had a life well lived and a career well worked, where you've had the opportunity to see so much and meet so many people. And it's just fascinating to get to learn some of your perspective about the world and see things through your eyes. Of course, the opportunity for us to actually have this conversation came about through the Bannatyne Legacy Circle at the Health Sciences Centre. And every year, the annual celebration of those who make a legacy gift to the foundation. I kind of want to sort of wrap things up by asking you, firstly, why HSC? Of all of the things that you've been involved in and all of the things you've seen in the world, why did you pick HSC as one of your most important causes?
This is a question my daughter put to me, and I said, well, I haven't really thought about it, but it is true. When this Bannatyne breakfast came up, and it was so nice, and I said, like, I haven't supported them that long or that often, and they're inviting me for breakfast. That is really nice. And when this all happened, and I thought, well, why not? I started out with Health Science Center. I'm very appreciative of what I learned there, because right after my 2 years at Health Science Center, I went to Europe And if I hadn't had that training from Health Science Center, I don't know how I would have fared. I had so much experience in those 2 years that I could say I knew something, whereas when you get out of training, well, you have 3 years now you are the RN, but basically you haven't really faced it. You haven't faced life. So at that breakfast, I thought, yeah, why not? And it never occurred to me to really think of where it came from and all the other places that were also good. I'm not running them down or anything, but it just so happened.
Well, that's amazing. And it's critical for people to think about that. Making a legacy gift is not a difficult thing, and it's not an onerous thing. And there is no perfect time to make a choice about what you're going to do. But certainly with the world being the way it is right now, it seems like the ideal moment to think about the causes that mean the most to you and about the ways that you can support them.
Mm-hmm. At the time when I started there, Health Science Center just started to do kidney transplants. And so I was involved in those things. And even though I was very inexperienced, I was there all night and waiting for things to happen and got the experience of doing that. And I always thought about that. Oh, I have one thing that I can say. I was there when that first started, that program.
And, that's... everyone has things that mean something to them for some reason or another. And this year is the year to really pick the causes that you care about. And if you can, find ways to give to them. It can be simple things like making a donation. It could be making that long-term legacy gift and planning ahead. Or it could be as simple as, I've been saying, just go to a grocery store that is locally owned, or go to a restaurant and order takeout from your favorite place. Or if you've got a choice of buying something online or from a store locally, try and buy it locally and keep those dollars in our community. Because when you support local, you're supporting people.
Yeah. And it's always been on my mind, but right now it's getting stressed again, quite, obviously, but, and I find that very good that people are reminded of it to do that. Yeah.
Of all of the things that I had the opportunity to learn about you before we sat down today, one of the ones that made me smile was the fact that when you first came to Canada, you spent a lot of time listening to the radio to help practice English. And for me, as somebody who just loves the medium of radio very deeply as a way of communicating with people, I just think it's so fantastic that you were able to sort of make a connection to your community right away just by turning on the radio.
Actually, to begin with, we didn't have one. First few months, I'm sure we didn't have one. But eventually, we got a radio too. I don't know when, but we did have a radio.
Well, I'm hoping that folks who've been listening to us on the radio today as we've had this conversation are inspired by your experience and your positivity and your support of the community.
This is not directly on the radio, is it?
Oh, no. All of this is
okay.
so this is the longer version.
Yeah.
When we
that's
sort
what
of
I was hoping.
Exactly. No, but the longer version when we polish everything up and insist that your family sit down and listen with rapt attention to make sure that they all know what happened to you personally. No, I know, I'm just kidding. But
yeah, I'm sure my grandson would be very excited to hear that, because he looked at, when I was laughing, he looked in my mouth one time and he says, you have bad teeth. And I said, no, that's a cap. And he says, you didn't brush your teeth when you were little. And I said, well, I didn't have a toothbrush when I was little. And he says, what?
From the mouths of babes, as they say.
Yes. I thought that was so cute the way he said it.
So before I let you go, I absolutely have to ask one question, Kathy.
Okay.
Do you and your friend still have any of those photographs?
Yes, negatives in the black bag got developed.
They made it home safely and got developed. See, that is incredible. Well, it's been a real genuine joy chatting with you, Kathy, and I look forward to the day where we can sit down with a cup of tea in person. I cannot thank you
Yeah,
enough.
well, maybe there will be another breakfast.
You've been listening to a special recording produced by CJNU 93.7 FM for the 2020 Health Sciences Centre Foundation Bannatyne Legacy Circle celebration. To learn more about the work of the HSC Foundation and the Bannatyne Legacy Circle, visit hscfoundation.mb.ca. And to find out more about Winnipeg's non-profit community cooperative radio station, CJNU 93.7 FM, head to cjnu.ca. I'm Adam Glynn. Thanks for listening.